welcome back to another video in this series on can you make money with the different animals with MaizePlus. And today, if you haven't guessed from what's in front of me, we're going to have a look at sheep. So no messing about, let's jump into PowerPoint, have a chat about what I've done, what I found out, and where we go from there. Okay, so what did we do this time? I had 100 sheep in the pen that you saw. It was another edited pen so that it would hold, again, 10 million litres of food, because that just means I can run through the months and record data that I need. Was recording the amount of food consumed, the value of the sheep so that we could see when their value peaked, and the amount of wool produced. And I was using there's a mod that lets you have bigger pallets, and I was using an edited version of that. So one pallet would hold all of the wool that they would ever produce. I think I set it to like 1 million litres. So that's kind of the test setup. With MaizePlus and without MaizePlus, all of the sheep breeds behave the same. So I just did the one. With MaizePlus, you can have straw usage for sheep, but I've not considered that because you need a custom pen for it. Not many pens are set up, and straw's not really that valuable, and I don't think it's going to change the outcome. As with all of the other animals that I've done so far, I have not considered lambs, same as I didn't consider calves, because they're the same in both cases. They occur at the same point, they're worth the same. It is worth noting that a healthy newborn lamb is worth £100, and you do get them every 5 months, so that is a big boost on the income, and we'll get to the value of that later on. As with all the others, I have used the animal food additions because that's how I play. The way MaizePlus is at delivery, it does not affect the wool production, so you get the same amount of wool from base game and with MaizePlus. I have been asked about how you change that, and I'm going to have a look at it probably over the Christmas break, and do a video on editing that and some of the other things that aren't edited by default by MaizePlus. And the last point, for the value of the sheep, I didn't bother putting a graph in because it's not so fundamental for this, but the price of an adult lamb sheep peaks at £1,000 at 36 months. It then levels out. It doesn't decline like the cattle. So if your sheep are older than 36 months, they will stay at £1,000. So that's kind of cool, because I think you're going to want to keep your sheep for longer with playing with MaizePlus. So let's have a look at how I fed them. Come on, PowerPoint. So last thing, I guess, is I only looked at normal difficulty. It's the same as I did for dairy and beef. If you're changing to easy and hard difficulty, obviously if you're buying the food, the cost doesn't change. So on easy you'll make more, on hard you'll make less. But if you're looking at selling the food, then the change should scale the same way. In terms of the feeding for the base game, I used hay for all of my food calculations, because it kind of makes sense. Base game sheep can eat grass or hay. I decided to use hay because, you know, in my brain I wouldn't store bales of grass over the winter, so if I want to feed them over the winter, I'm using hay. So we're just going to use hay all the way through. And with a weird, I guess actually for base game, I haven't considered the farm supply pack because it doesn't include things like hay. But hay works out quite cheap buying it from the store because the bales are really big. They're 8,000 litre bales. So the farm supply pack doesn't really factor in with this one. And then with MaizePlus, so I've done slightly differently, and you'll see why when we get into the numbers. So for the value of the feed, so one of the comparisons that I'm going to do is the value of the wool produced versus the value of the feed you put in. For MaizePlus, what I've done is for the kind of 4 winter months of the year, I've used silage, hay, sugar beets and grain mix to work out the value of the food that's going in. And then for 8 months of the year when grass is growing, I have used basically the value of hay, because With MaizePlus, you can do indirect grazing, so you can go and mow grass, pick it up with a forage wagon, drop it in. That covers 3 of the 4 bars for sheep, and the last one you can fill with hay. So essentially a field of grass will complete it, or you could be using grazing, but I'm not really considering the grazing mod in here. So what I've considered is that over the summer when the grass is growing, you'll use indirect grazing and hay to work out the value of the feed. And randomly, if you look at considering using the farm supply pack or buying products from the store, I think because a lot of it has to come from the store anyway, the cost works out exactly the same. And what I've used for that is the alfalfa silage and alfalfa hay bales that come as part of MaizePlus, because they're pretty good value, carrots that come as part of MaizePlus, and then buying grain mix in bulk from the Deutsche Buy Point that's part of MaizePlus. So that's how I've worked out what the feed is either worth or costs us to buy. How much do they eat? And again, this is the big difference between base game and MaizePlus. So this is every month, starting from, I buy the lambs at 0 months old, get the first data point at 1 month old, and you can see with the base game they peak at about 50 liters per sheep per month of food consumed. That's level all the way through, and then for MaizePlus we are up at 290 liters of food per sheep per month. So yes, it's a heck of a lot more, and the important one with this is the output isn't changing, so it definitely changes the finances. So if we jump to the next page, as I said, MaizePlus doesn't change the wool production, so the 2 lines are on top of each other, and this is where I said that you probably want to keep your sheep for longer than you might think, because wool production doesn't, although food consumption peaks at 6 months and they start producing lambs at 12 months, wool production doesn't actually peak until 18 months at 42 liters per sheep per month. And then that's level all the way across. So, you're really looking at the post 18 months old for getting the best value out of sheep. But let's have a look at the finances now. What I have on the screen here is the return you get from selling the wool at the best price in the year on normal difficulty versus the value of the food you would have to put in using the feed that I mentioned earlier. We're starting off with a cost of £200 to buy the lamb, so that's why we start negative, and then each month value of the wool, take away the cost of the feeding. The vertical yellow lines are when you will get lambs starting from a lamb that's 0 months old. If you buy the slightly older one, sometimes that changes when their productivity gets high enough. But depending on the number of days in the month as to when you'll start producing lambs. And as I said, I haven't included those in the calculation, but you could consider that every time there is a yellow line, you could step each of the lines up by £100, but obviously that doesn't change the difference between them. It does change things like when you become profitable, obviously. So the orange line is the base game, blue line is MaizePlus, and as you can see with MaizePlus, it takes a lot longer to become profitable with sheep versus just selling the food. That is just because they eat a lot more, so you need to get to the point. You can see that the line starts to turn up at about 14 months as the wool production really picks up, and you're then starting to produce, the value of the wool you're producing is then more than the feed going in, so you do become profitable. And as I said, you could imagine moving both of these lines up by £100 at each of those yellow lines. So realistically, you could be looking at being profitable if you're selling the lambs by 22 months with MaizePlus. But obviously, base game, you're making quite a bit more because you're putting a lot less food in. It's about 6 times less food, I think it was. So how about if you're buying the food? And so this compares using the food that I was buying from the store versus the value of the wool. You get a very similar crossing point actually, because the value of the food if you were selling it versus the cost of food of buying it is very similar, and it sells a similar story that you need to hold on to your sheep for a lot longer with MaizePlus for them to become profitable. And depending on how big you're going, obviously you're going to make money selling lambs every 5 months, so the line will step up. But I guess the big takeaway is that with MaizePlus, sheep are less profitable, but they are still profitable. Again, from the 14 to 15 month point, you're making more from the wool that you're selling than the cost of buying the animal, than the cost of buying the feed for the animal. Quite often when you're playing Farm Sim, you won't buy the youngest animal, you'll buy the oldest animal available to jumpstart your progress. So the next graph we have here is if you are buying from the store the 8-month-old sheep, those will cost you £488. And you'll see that then again with buying the food, by the time you hit 17 months old with base game, you are in profit. So you've recovered the cost of the animal plus the cost of feeding. So your wool production is much higher from the start. And with MaizePlus enabled, once they're 23 months old, you're in profit. So you've recovered the cost of buying the animal plus the cost of buying the feed, and that's what 15 months. So they quite quickly become profitable if you buy the older ones. And again, you're going to be getting lambs every 5 months, so every 5 months you can jump that line up a bit more. So a summary: the increased food consumption with MaizePlus does delay the profitability, but you can still make money with sheep, particularly if you buy the older ones, because you're more quickly into the period where you're producing the most amount of wool versus the amount you have to feed them, because the feeding peaks much earlier. I don't know about the rest of the world, but I know in the UK, sheep farmers, I don't think, make money from selling wool. The cost of getting the sheep sheared, so a lot of sheep farmers, I think, get professionals in to shear the sheep, and the cost of that versus the amount they get paid per fleece means that actually wool is not a very profitable commodity, certainly in the UK. And I think that means that really in the UK, and I'm basing it off of the fact that watching TV programs, I am not a farmer, but I think that in the UK a lot of the profitability around lambs and sheep comes from selling the lambs for meat. And equally with base game and with MaizePlus, you'll make a lot more money from your sheep if you're selling your lambs early, and not putting too much feed into them. You'll get from day one, you'll get £100 for the lamb. The value of lambs goes up by £25 a day until you hit that peak of 1,000 or a month, sorry. So there might be a trade at some point where you feed them for a month or so, and because they don't eat very much, and you maximize that profit. But yes, sell your lambs early, I think, is the best thing, really. And if you're playing with MaizePlus and you've got a fairly big sheep pasture, a lot like I have on Attingham, then grazing pretty much means they're going to be a passive source of income for most of the year, if you use the grazing mod, because grazing will cover all of their feed needs for 8, maybe 9, 10 months of the year, depending on how the map is set up. So really you don't need to do very much with them. You can just leave them out in the field, they'll eat grass, the wool will get produced, and then over the winter you'll have to feed them a bit. So I think with MaizePlus, sheep are still a really good option. You just need to be, it's a slightly longer game. I think that's the case with a lot of stuff with MaizePlus. If you're going to keep the lambs, then you really want to be keeping them for 2 years. If you're not going to be playing the game that long, I would be selling your lambs early, get a good return on them, keep your main breeding stock producing lambs, giving you lots of wool. And that is pretty much it, really. So we'll just jump back in the game for a bit of a wrap. Yeah, so that is how MaizePlus affects the profitability of sheep. Now, I think base game sheep are a very profitable animal, and the changes that MaizePlus makes delays that profitability. But I think really MaizePlus is a mod that you're playing for longer saves, longer games. It takes you the time to get established. We saw with the dairy cows, it takes you a while to overcome that initial food input to become profitable. Now with sheep, you can counteract that slightly because you can buy the older sheep, and then you're much quicker into producing lambs, producing the maximum amount of wool and getting to that profitable state. I was very tempted to mix in how managing the lambs would affect that return, but I wanted to keep this video consistent with the other ones that I've done, because at the end I want to be able to compare them all. If people are interested, I can do a kind of mini add-on to this one. It's a separate video just showing you, how selling the lambs at each point and work out the best point to sell the lambs. As I said, the sheep are gaining £25 a day in value, and there'll be a point where the food you're putting in becomes worth more than that. So actually I'm really interested in that. So if you do want one of those videos, please say below, because actually I'm probably going to do it anyway, because I have farms that have sheep on them and I want to work out when's the best point to sell them off, and if I can make a video out of it, even better. So I think there'll be a supplemental one to this looking at that as to when is the best point to sell the lambs that you get. And yeah, I think the next video is probably going to be pigs. I have got this one done fairly quickly after the beef video. The pigs one, I'm not sure how long that will take. When I've done pigs in the past, it's taken a long time. But with this different method of collecting the data, it might be much quicker. So we have pigs and horses left, so 2 more videos to go. And then I'll look at comparing them. And if there are any add-ons that people want, like I want to do the lamb add-on probably sooner rather than later, because I've got the information to make that video. It just didn't occur to me until I was talking through the slides as that actually that would be really useful. But yeah, I want to get that extra lamb video done, get the pigs and the horses done. But if there are then any others that people are interested around this, then please comment. I said I'm going to do the one on increasing the wool production, and probably eggs from chickens as well, because that was the other thing that people had asked about, eggs and wool, to how to increase those. I haven't looked at it yet. I do plan to. And that's it. So if you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button. If you've got comments, questions or suggestions, put them below. And if you've watched however long this video is and you're not, please subscribe and turn on notifications. At the moment, YouTube's got this cool new feature. It gives you your week in review, and at the moment about 60% of the people that are watching my videos are not subscribed. So that would give my channel a massive boost if that 60% of you that aren't subscribed did subscribe. I'm going to say thank you to the patrons and the YouTube channel members. Really appreciate all of you guys supporting the channel. I would be doing this anyway because I enjoy doing it, but it's kind of cool, certainly on Patreon there's a little bit of a community growing as well around that page, which is really cool. Got Discord, where there is a really good community going, nice group of guys there chatting away, and yeah, I will see you next time.